everyone, Alexa Donne here, and today I am going to be talking about echoes in your writing. Identifying and eliminating echoes in my writing has been one of the #1 lessons that I have taken away from my last two editors. Them pointing this out to me has just really pushed me in my writing and made me a better writer. And now I can't help but see them everywhere when I read other writers' writing. So this is a tip that I want to pass on to you as a way to strengthen your writing. What is an echo? It is an instance of repeating a word or a phrase on the same page, in the same paragraph, scene, chapter, or book. And you're like, wait, of course I'm going to repeat words. I know. Most strictly, it's gonna trigger your brain, ping a reader's brain when it does occur in either the same sentence, paragraph, or page. These are the egregious ones that you're really going to be focusing on. But there is kind of like a subcategory of echoes when you use hyper-specific phrasing, especially idiomatic phrases that you can really only get away with using once in your manuscript. These are the kind of echoes that a copy editor might point out to you. Yes, this has happened to me, but I'm mostly going to be focusing on those line level echoes. And don't worry, I'm gonna have examples for you from my own writing so you can see what they look like. Now, very often, crutch words are going to be your biggest echoes, and I have talked about crutch words in a few videos. I did a whole one on the word just, which it turned out is one of my worst crutch words, and a ton of my echoes were using the word just multiple times on the same page. I also have a video all about crutch words, identifying and eliminating them, so I'm gonna have links down below to both of those. So know that very often your echoes are also going to be your crutch words, but not always. Most often, the culprits for echoes are super basic, often but not always descriptive words. It's either common nouns, basic common adjectives, and sometimes adverbs. They're not going to bother every reader, but the reader that they are going to bother, they might bother them a lot. They're going to be reading and go, why did you use the word light 4 times on this page? Don't you know other words? And so on. And that's the thing, because they are basic ways to kind of describe things, they're going to pop out basically as lazy writing. Again, I'm speaking as someone who has a problem with this, calling myself out. Essentially, by learning to see the echoes, identify them, and actually fix them, you're going to be pushing yourself to be a stronger, more specific, better descriptive writer. I think the best way to demonstrate echoes is to give you those examples. I decided to call myself out. It was easiest to pull these from my actual writing. These are ones where my editor called me out on these instances and then I had to fix them. So I'm going to show you both the original as well as my fix. Some are definitely pushed more than others. Sometimes you are going to go, wow, I really didn't try. I'm going to rewrite that. But in other cases, it's just changing one of them so you can keep the other. So the first example is from the Ivies, and I wrote this sterling sentence, which is, during the winter, we do the majority of our training in here, away from the harsh hand of winter. Now, over several versions of working with both my editor and the copy editor, this was turned into a far more specific, stronger sentence, and I got to keep the instance of winter that I really liked, so it became, from November to January, we do the majority of our training inside, away from the harsh hand of winter. The next one is definitely an example of just being as basic as humanly possible and not pushing myself at all. It's actually from the same scene. So the sentence is, the lights are off in the rowing room, so Sierra heads over to the light panel and I walk down the center aisle by instinct. This is an instance where I ended up changing both of them to rework the sentence so it was stronger overall. The lights are off in the rowing room is kind of indirect. I basically rewrote it so that it's a more active descriptive sentence too. The rowing room is pitch dark, so Sierra heads over to the control panel as I walk down the center aisle by instinct. Speaking of light, I discovered a lot of my echoes and indeed crutch words come from describing the light situation in a room. Dark was actually one of my crutch words in this book. So another instance of echoes my editor called out. It's dark, but the shadows playing on the ceiling and wall are familiar. I'm in my room. I must have had a nightmare. The wisps of the leftover dream don't leave quickly, though. I was somewhere cold and dark. So with this one, I kept one instance and changed the other one just to be a little more specific. So this became, it's dark, but the shadows playing on the ceiling and the wall are familiar. I'm in my room. I must have had a nightmare. The wisps of the leftover dream don't leave quickly, though. I was somewhere cold and inky black. Next, I went back to The Stars We Steal. I used to be much worse about echoes before I had my first editor who really pointed them out to me. Thankfully, I can say it wasn't quite as bad in the IVs. I gave you some of the worst examples right there that weren't my crutch words. I mean, if we did it would just be a repeat of that video. So this next one is, there were enough electronics on board that making enough of them overheat would spell death for all of us. It's literally the kind of thing, like, until it's pointed out to you, you're like, wow, I'm not very smart, am I? And then I did a very basic correction here, and I made it, there were so many electronics on board that making enough of them overheat would spell death for us all. So it's just pushing yourself a little bit to take basic words and make them different basic words so that the sentence works. The next example I have is one where there was an echo on the page. It wasn't a single line or series of lines. I had one on the top of the page, and then I repeated the same word in a description further down on the page, and my editor pointed it out. So at the top of the page, the sentence was, I disappeared into the latest Jupiter Morrow mystery for several hours, but then a laugh, bright and musical, pinged my ears. Then later down on the page, now what are you going to wear tonight? Evgenia abruptly changed tone, light and bright once more, and Elliot returned a low response I couldn't hear. Now, one could argue that I'm establishing character, that she has a bright tone to her voice, so maybe the echo could be intentional. But it was far easier to simply change it, making the first instance a stronger sentence, so I changed it to, I disappeared into the latest Jupiter Morrow mystery for several hours, but then a musical laugh pinged my ears. Then I kept the second instance exactly the same. It's stronger anyway to just say a musical laugh, because everyone can kind of fill in the blanks there, and musical laughs tend to be kind of bright as a matter of course. I honestly could have gone on if I used The Stars We Steal, because it was actually that wonderful editor of mine who introduced me to this concept of echoes. She would circle them and go echo and kind of taught me to see them for myself. And that's the thing. I'm pointing them out for you here so you can start to see them in your own writing. It's really common for us, especially in drafting, to just write, and our eyes will literally gloss over things like repetition. They also gloss over spelling mistakes. Your brains will literally correct them, which I find fascinating. But basically, training yourself to see the echoes and consciously avoid them, it just makes your writing stronger. It's not always about having a better, brilliant sentence or description, but making small changes just so that the reader doesn't stop when they hit those repeat words. It ends up being a win-win no matter the reader, whether they're the type who is going to notice repetition or the type who isn't. Either way, you're giving them stronger, more distinct, descriptive prose. And then just a note kind of on those idiomatic phrase echoes. This is just a case where if you use something super distinct, it'll stick in a reader's mind, and if they hit that same super distinct phrase later, they'll go, huh, it pulls them out of the story momentarily. So two examples from my own writing that I did in The Stars We Steal, one of these for sure, and then the other one I think happened in the IVs, just phrases I use that are slightly unusual, and I had copy editors go, literally, they're amazing at this. It would be like page 17 and they'd be like, you use this on page 285, and you're like, whoa. But they're paid to notice these things. So the two of mine were bog standard, which is a very Britishy phrase that I use, and I realized it was one I had to use pretty sparingly because it is a bit jarring. And then the other one was the elephant in the room. So just an idiomatic phrase that basically I learned you get one, so you'd better really use it well when you do use it. So there are a ton of other ones. It's going to be different for every writer, but it's basically earning those super distinctive phrases when you use them in your manuscript. Similarly, this kind of goes to crutch phrases, which I covered in a different video. Things like rolling your eyes or waggling an eyebrow or those sorts of things. You should only get a few of them in your manuscript before they start really sticking out for the reader, so you can kind of treat those as echoes as well. Let me know down below in the comments any questions you have about echoes. Give this video a thumbs up if you like it, and I will make more videos about little tricks and tips that will help you strengthen and improve your writing. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, go ahead and do that. I post new videos 2 to 3 times a week. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and happy writing.